We conveyed our concerns to senior government officials about the insufficient progress in addressing justice, reconciliation, and accountability. The United States has always supported a Sri Lankan process to resolve the issues emanating from the conflict. But as I have noted earlier, the patience of the international community is wearing thin with the pace of progress. I conveyed to senior officials that the United States is motivated here out of a vision for an inclusive, peaceful, prosperous, and unified Sri Lanka. It is this vision, this inclusive vision, which also motivates the United States to sponsor a third resolution in the United Nations Human Rights Council. But without justice and reconciliation, without accountability, there can be no sustained peace and equitable prosperity for the people of Sri Lanka. Respect for human rights, promoting transparent and democratic governance are essential to flourish in this global economy. Unfortunately, continued deterioration in these areas is already beginning to take its toll on Sri Lanka's democratic traditions and institutions.